Are you thinking of buying a property here in Brisbane? In this video, I'm going to break down 6 key reasons that you should be buying property in Brisbane right now. And if you stick around to the end, I'll share with you a reason why Brisbane might not be the right market for you. Now, Brisbane is becoming a global city. There's some big projects which are being completed. There's an Olympic Games on the horizon, and we're no longer that small country town. And so we're going to unpack why Emily and I have purchased over $5 million worth of property here in the Brisbane market. And I'm still a Brisbane bull when it comes to the Brisbane market over the next 5, 7, 10 years. Now, before we dive into the list of 6 reasons, I just want to preface this that there are other markets in Australia. I am a Brisbane bull, but I do acknowledge that there's other locations which may well suit investors to buy both metro or regional locations. I am just a Brisbane buyer's agent. I consider myself and the team here at Purpose Property to be local area experts. So I think it's valuable in sharing our perspective with you as to why we focus on buying here in the greater Brisbane market. Now, the first reason is relative affordability. If you've had a look at some of the CoreLogic data recently, you'll see that Brisbane is the second most expensive based on median dwelling value. The thing that marketing tactic won't tell you is that dwelling median value is a mix of houses, townhouses, and units. When you look at the housing market, Brisbane is still far more affordable than locations like Sydney and Melbourne. And so if you're wanting to break into the Brisbane or Southeast Queensland market, you can still get into a bread and butter property around that $600,000 mark. Now, of course, you can spend more money than $600,000. You can spend $700,000, $800,000, $900,000, up to $1 million for a lot of our buyers here in the Brisbane market. And we buy homes as low as that $550,000, $600,000, all the way up to $2 million, depending on the investor. And that's where it comes down to both your price and strategy. But if you're looking for a major metro market that is still relatively affordable to some of the other capital cities, then Brisbane still ticks that box because you can buy investment grade property on blocks on over 600 square meters in established suburbs for $600,000 to about $900,000 for the everyday investor. And I've actually made 2 purchases like this myself just this year. I bought 2 properties about 3 weeks apart and dropped around $1.5 million in the space of about 3 weeks. We bought a property north of Brisbane located in a regional council called Moreton Bay. And we bought a property we're affectionately calling the Bray Park Bomb, which is a major renovation project for us. And that property cost us around $640,000 to purchase. And we're going to be doing a major renovation plus adding a granny flat to the place. So we're spending up to around $200,000 on that property, which will bring the total cost of the property to around $800,000 to $850,000. We also purchased on the south side of Brisbane recently in an area called Shayla Park. And I recently broke that in detail in a video called Watch Me Buy Our Next Investment Property. So you can click that card somewhere here if you want to see that video. But the high level view is we bought that property for $855,000, which in my opinion is still relatively affordable for buying a 1,000 square meter block only 25 kilometers from Brisbane CBD in an established suburb located very close to shops in between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and with some value add potential to either add a granny flat or do a subdivision. And so this leads me into point number 2 as to why you should potentially buy in Brisbane is the current infrastructure boom that we're seeing here in the Brisbane market. We've got highway alternative upgrades, which are both major projects north and south of Brisbane's CBD. They're doing the Coomera Connector south, and they're doing the Bruce Highway upgrade north, where they're trying to create second highways for the local suburbs to take the traffic off the main motorway that's going to the Sunshine Coast and Gold Coast respectively. We've also got the Cross River Rail, which is not just based in Brisbane, but runs north and south of the Brisbane CBD. We've got the Metro line, which I saw a Metro bus recently in the wild at Greenslopes bus station, and that's coming along as well. So we've got buses, roads, transport infrastructure happening, bridges being built, which are connecting Brisbane and making it a more interconnected city. This lifestyle change where you're able to walk more across the river, where you're able to easily catch buses and trains and transport into work and eventually into the Olympic Games venues, is adding more lifestyle, and it's more affordable to more people. And so because this interconnectedness is happening, Brisbane is growing off the back of this infrastructure boom. When there's infrastructure, there's also jobs. Now, Brisbane is a very diverse economy. We've not just got civil and construction jobs. We've got a lot of of doctors and lawyers and accountants and finance experts all in that CBD location. And then outside of the CBD, you've got those commercial precincts, the tradies, the manufacturers. You've got the Murray locations and Eagle Farm located close to the airport in terms of transport. So there's lots and lots of different industries here in the Brisbane market, and there's lots of job opportunities and incomes, which allows people to pay more for property. Paying more for property means that those prices will rise over time. And so what we're seeing in those in-demand locations, especially between that 3 to 10 kilometre mark from the CBD, is when we've got those dual incomes where mum and dad are earning $100,000 to $150,000 each, you've got a household income of $300,000 plus. Families can afford what they want in terms of lifestyle and location, and they are willing to pay for it. The fourth key point as to why you should buy in Brisbane is we still have pretty reasonable rental yields. If you're looking in some Sydney and Melbourne markets or elsewhere across Australia, you're not necessarily going to get as good a rental yields as we have here in Brisbane. Now, if you go regional, you should be getting better rental yields, but you're taking that risk because you've potentially got less capital growth or less demand for those properties and more land supply. So when clients are sitting down and having a chat with myself, I'm generally saying that most people can achieve a 4 to 4.5% gross yield. Now, some of my house and granny flat properties are going to achieve a 5.5 to 6% gross yield. And some of my lower rental yield properties are around that 3.8% mark or 3.7, which is the recent purchase that I just made in Shayla Park. That property's got a lower rental yield because we bought so much more land size. We bought that 1,000 square meter block, which creates yield compression. And so if you're buying a bread and butter property here in the Brisbane or Greater Brisbane market, run your numbers off 4 to 4.5%, and then you could take some upside towards 5% or some downside towards around that 3.75%, depending on what property you buy. Overall, they're relatively attractive yields because of that affordable purchase price that we spoke of at the start, and because yes, you'll be about $10,000 to $20,000 out of pocket if you've got 80% LVR and a 6.5% interest rate. But if you're making a long-term investment decision, Brisbane still has that growth potential. This leads me into point number 5, which is the growth and development that is happening in terms of the property market. So there's a couple reasons people buy property, but mainly people are buying property for long-term growth and wealth creation, and they're looking to create cash flow in retirement. Month to month at the moment, based on CoreLogic's data, we're seeing 1% growth in property prices. That would mean if you're buying an $800,000 house, that is going up $8,000 a month in this current market. And I don't really see this slowing down significantly over the next 12, 24, 36 months. I'm never making short-term investing decisions. I'm always looking to make mid to long-term investing decisions and buy for the long term. So you shouldn't be buying based on 1% per month growth now. You should be buying on Brisbane's potential over the next 3, 5, 7, and 10 years. And long term, Brisbane has performed around an 8% growth rate, even up to around 8.5, 8.8%. I like to run my numbers personally of 5 to 6% growth, and there's never any guarantees of growth. If you look at periods of growth across all the major capital cities, they'll generally have a 8 to 12 year window where they grow at 10 to 15%, and then another 8 to 12 year window where they grow at 1% per year. And so you've got to be wary of periods of growth and then periods of stagnation. But for me, I'm very bullish on the Brisbane market, and that's the reason I've made 2 more purchases this year, is I can see the potential, I can see the demand coming, and I can see quality assets from an investment grade point of view in terms of land size, ability to add value, and ability to develop. And that's the other point. You're not just getting the market growth, but you're able to create value for a reasonable price still here in the Brisbane market. We've got a lot of clients that do cosmetic renovations to boost the value of their properties. And that's something that Emily and I have personally done in our property portfolio to fast track and to continue to grow our asset base. Now, if you're willing to fast track and add value and then buy capital growth assets and have reasonable holding cash flow and then balance out with those cash flow assets like unit blocks or granny flats, that's where you can continue to build a multi-million-dollar property portfolio. So I still think Brisbane has some very strong growth over the next 5 to 7 to 10 year window. And so that's why I've continued to buy another $1.4, $1.5 million worth of property just this year in the last few months. This leads me to the icing, or the cherry on the cake, which is the Olympic Games in 2032. And what we're seeing is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, when enough people talk about Brisbane's potential and talk about Brisbane's growth and talk about the Olympic Games, and we go round and round in circles, and we've got overseas migrants wanting to move to Brisbane for the sunshine, the lifestyle, the jobs, the infrastructure, the growth, and we've got this hype around the Olympic Games, that is the cherry on the cake. And so this is driving or fast tracking the growth of the Brisbane market. With these venues coming up, we have a lot of established venues, which is fantastic. But like I said, they're bringing forward projects that otherwise would have taken place another 5 or 10 or 15 years down the track. They're bringing forward those projects in anticipation for the Olympic Games. And what that means is fast-track development and growth of Southeast Queensland as a whole, and that's driving up Brisbane and the growth here in the Brisbane market. Now, I said to you at the start, we were going to talk about some reasons why Brisbane might not be right for you. And it's if you don't like mosquito. A reason or two not to buy in Brisbane. Floods is a big thing I hear. Now, all of Brisbane doesn't go underwater. So if you run your flood checks on properties and the historical mapping's not there, you're probably going to be pretty safe. So don't let that be the reason that you avoid the Brisbane market. But one of the reasons is if you can't break into the Brisbane market because you're just starting out. Some people who can only afford a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 purchase price. And so you may want to look at other locations or other economies or major regional markets for your first purchase to break into the market sooner. What we've seen the last 12 to 18 months is apartment growth outstrip property growth or housing growth here in the Brisbane market because the affordable price point has had so much demand. Now, I still think Brisbane is relatively affordable to a Sydney or a Melbourne, but it's still unaffordable for some people wanting to start out in their property journey. There's also an argument for diversification. If you're looking to buy in Brisbane and you've already got a few properties like I do, I've got 4 properties here in Brisbane and a unit block in Coffs Harbour, my next purchase might genuinely not be in the Brisbane market. And the reason is about diversification and about exposure. So you might want to balance your exposure between different states and cities. We see this a lot with Melbourneites and Victorians who have no land tax thresholds and the highest stamp duty. They end up wanting to buy in other states. And that's why Melbourne's got a bit of a crisis in terms of their rental stock, because Melbourne is hitting property investors so hard. And so you might want to diversify across WA, across Queensland, New South Wales, and build your property portfolio that way. Overall, I think Brisbane is a fantastic property market to potentially buy in and hold for the long term. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. We've got over $5 million of our own residential property portfolio here in Brisbane. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Do you think these 6 reasons were a great reason to buy in Brisbane? Or are you going to be buying somewhere else in the near future? Let me know where your next property purchase is going to be and what you think of the Brisbane market. And if you're looking for a Brisbane-based buyer's agent to help you buy your own home or an investment property here in the greater Brisbane market, then head over to purposeproperty.com.au to sit down and book in a free session with myself where we'll have a chat about your goals and about how we can help you secure a property here in the Brisbane market in the next 3 to 6 months. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a like on this video and give this video a click over here. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.